keep your heads down to see the grey carpet, and then you're safe. So let's get everybody onto the grey carpet. Come forward, folks. Come back. A bit more room so we can get everybody in. Come on board, folks. Come on board. If you come forward out of the luggage compartment, then you can stand up. Right, that's it. That's good. Oh, one more to come. Okay, so welcome aboard Delta Golf. That's what we call our aircraft. It's the nickname. It's the end of its reg plate. Golf, Bravo, Bravo, Delta Golf. So we call it Delta Golf for short. One of the only 20 Concordes built. Only built 20 in total. 14 of them flew commercially. 18 of them still exist, various places around the world. There's a plaque up on the left there, a silver plaque, shows where they all are in various museums around the world. There's one still sat on the tarmac at T5, Heathrow. We keep borrowing bits from it, they don't seem to mind, it's fantastic. But the mostly in museums. There's one in Barbados, unfortunately can't visit that one, the governor had a strop and wouldn't let us use it anymore. But all the rest you can, in Germany, France, England, Scotland, America, obviously. So there's quite a few all around the place that you can go and visit, but this is the best one, so I'm glad you've come here. Out of those 20 Concordes they built, only 14 flew commercially. 7 with Air France, 7 with British Airways. And the rest we use as test beds, as prototypes and prototypes. This one was a test aircraft, so it never flew commercially, but it flew quite a few hours altogether. All the British pilots learnt to fly on this aircraft, and it was fully equipped. It had 64 seats in its rear cabin, and it still has 36 in the front cabin. But we've taken the ones out of the rear here so that we can show you some bits and pieces, and we can use it in a different way. So in 2 minutes' time, there are 4 screens, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up through the cabin, and it's going to show the story, tell you the story of this aircraft and how it got to be here, because it certainly didn't fly here. Have a look at it's very interesting, much more interesting than me. So if you just gather around, when you hear the sound start up, go and watch the screens there. But in the meantime, I just want to show you a couple of things of interest before we watch the video, and then after the video we're going to go forward and take you on a short flight. Now you remember we talked about the heat that generated in the aircraft when it was flying at that speed, generated so much heat in the body of the aircraft. We've stripped off the cladding there, so you can see on either side, the green you can see there is the other side of the white metal that's on the outside. It's not I keep on getting it wrong in my head, I keep calling it a sheet, but it's not a sheet of metal because it was milled out of a solid piece of metal. So it was milled out to that shape in 2 halves and bolted together. But it's the thickness of a 50p piece, 2.5 millimeters thick. You're 11 miles up, they'll be fine. I'm sure they'll be fine. Very small windows, smallest windows you ever see in a commercial aircraft, because you're flying at 60,000 feet. The pressure differential is so great, you couldn't have windows bigger than that, they would have exploded. And the other problem you've got, it's multi-layered glass. You can see there's more than one layer of glass there. In the airspace, if there's any moisture at that altitude, it would form a mist. Because of the altitude, the water would mist and cover the whole of the window. You've just spent £7,000 on a ticket. You want to be able to see out the window, even though there's nothing to see it. Curvature of the earth, another Concorde if you're quick, but that's it. But anyway, so that people could see, there's a brown tube that joins up all the air spaces, and that would blast dry air into the air spaces and make sure that glass was kept clear at all times. So of course it's a real problem. I mean, the supersonic aircraft they're building at the moment won't have probably any windows at all. They just have a camera on the outside and a big screen on the inside. And going on to that, we've got, oh no, we haven't got time now. I'll talk to you about supersonic aircraft when the video's over. So a few seconds time, video's going to start. Please move right up to the front and here, all 4 screens. You need about 4 people, 4 or 5 people on each screen.
Concorde was the first British production Concorde, the 3rd built in the UK. Golf, Bravo, Bravo, Delta Golf, or Delta Golf as she's affectionately known, opened the door for Concorde to enter passenger service. Like every other Concorde, over 30% of Delta Golf's airframe was built here at Brooklands before being shipped to Filton for final assembly. In the hands of test pilots Brian Trubshaw and Peter Baker, Delta Golf first took to the sky on February the 13th, 1974, at the start of a test programme that would lead to Concorde's airworthiness certification. The first flight, which lasted 1 hour and 45 minutes, saw the aircraft fly from Filton to the Concorde test base at Fairford, to join Concorde 002 and Concorde 01 in the British flight test programme. Delta Golf flew to many locations all over the globe, such as Singapore, Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates, during a flight test program that lasted more than 7 years. She was the first Concorde to carry 100 passengers at twice the speed of sound. Delta Golf was used by British Airways crews for training in the summer of 1975. Over 50 training flights were conducted out of Fairford before passenger services commenced the following year. The aircraft's final flight came on Christmas Eve 1981, after which she was put into long-term storage at Filton. British Airways acquired ownership of Delta Golf in 1984 and in 2003 offered her to Brooklands Museum for restoration and display. Inside and out, the aircraft had been stripped of just about every conceivable part, but with BA's enormous Concorde spares holding, it was hoped that most parts could be found and eventually refitted. The aircraft was repositioned to allow it to be divided into 5 major sections, after smaller items such as the intakes and wingtips had been removed and transported to Brooklands. The Brooklands built forward and aft fuselage sections were the first major pieces to arrive at the museum in May 2004. A few weeks later, the 2 main wing sections were separated from the fuselage and transported the 125 miles to the museum. The final piece to be moved was the central fuselage section of Concorde, on which the restoration would be based. It was transported along the M4 and arrived safely at Brooklands after journeying down the leafy Surrey roads towards the museum. Hundreds of museum supporters, as well as His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, were present to greet Concorde and see her being unloaded. Although it would be many months before structural rebuilding got underway, the volunteer team set to work restoring key parts of the aircraft, such as the droop nose and intakes, as well as beginning to remove 20 years of grime from the fuselage and wings ahead of repainting. The museum's contractors for the rebuilding started work in early 2005. The first task was to reposition the 5 main sections so that they could be reattached. When the aircraft was sectioned, new production joints were essentially formed. Aluminium channel sections were used to rejoin both the wings and fuselage. Alongside the structural work, the main volunteer effort got underway to repaint the aircraft. The surface was prepared before being painted with the trademark Concorde gloss white finish. After the forward fuselage had been rejoined, volunteers refitted Concorde's famous droop nose. With the structural rebuild nearly complete, Concorde was airbagged to full height to allow the landing gears to be fitted, the first time in nearly 20 years that the aircraft had rested on its own undercarriage. A volunteer team refitted the outer wingtips in late 2005, painstakingly installing over 600 bolts to hold them in place. With work underway to restore the interiors and cockpit, the volunteer effort in 2006 began with refitting the restored air intakes and rebuilding the engine bays. Special teams were formed to repaint and then fit the giant Brooklands-built tail fin, which was fitted in the summer of 2006, topping out the main rebuilding programme. Due largely to the efforts of an army of dedicated volunteers, sponsors and contributors to the museum's appeal fund, a Concorde with an uncertain future at the start of the millennium had been saved for future generations.
Okay everybody, I hope you found that interesting, the story of our Concorde and how it got to be here at Brooklands. So I'm going to take you forward now. You're going to sit in the original seats and have a short flight on Concorde. You're welcome to take pictures in the front cabin, but please no video because there's a copyright on the video that you're going to see.
Yeah.